Well, if you haven't been to Centennial Park lately, it's probably about time you visited. I'm out here at the newly installed Cockrill Spring landscape installation in downtown Nashville with landscape architect Tara Armistead. Now, Tara, it's not every day that such a historical find gets discovered on a landscape job. Tell me a little bit about the history of Cockrill Spring and how you all came upon it.
Well, actually, I find this almost like a mystery novel, how we discovered what's gone on here. I'm going to take you back 400 million years.
Please.
And there was a broad inland sea, and Nashville was buried under that. There was a huge upwarp. All of the limestone was exposed, and therefore you have all these springs in our Nashville basin. And this was one of those springs. Cockrill Springs, we discovered, and it actually was the terminal spring of the Natchez Trace. So we've looked in archives, we've read scripts that talk about coming in and getting a cool drink of water from, off of Natchez Trace, coming to Cockrill Spring, watering horses and things here. So we knew about it. We knew that it was in this general vicinity, and we ended up digging really with a backhoe and a rebar, like just pushing into the ground where we thought it would be. We hit this rock, which is, once we scraped away about 3 feet of soil, we found this rock. It's a 5x5 piece of limestone. We lifted it, and underneath it was the spring. So we were stunned. You can still see some of the drill holes in it. We know that this is at least 150, 200 years old, probably from the Natchez Trace. What is interesting too is that cholera outbreaks started to happen in the 1800s. And the city thought the right thing to do for the health of the citizens, more people are moving to Nashville, is to pipe all the water rather than have it open and exposed, because open and exposed, it gets contaminated. People were cropping up with cholera in around the different springs. So we know that in the mid to late 1800s, they piped it.
Piped it to the storm drains?
Yes.
Okay.
And so it's been piped for over 150 years to our storm drains. So finding it and daylighting it was really something. And we did that in about 3 years ago, put a meter on it to kind of see if it was a spring that would dry up in the summertime. But it doesn't. It runs consistently year-round. And we've had a meter on it for a couple years, and it produces, and this is crazy to put your head around, but about 50 million gallons of spring water a year.
You're kidding me.
So about 200 gallons of spring water a minute. And whereas that before was going into our storm sewer and being treated, now one of the most important parts of the design is that to daylight it and reuse it in the park. So
fantastic. Tell me some of the ideals and elements that you're trying to incorporate with this water and how you wanted it to be viewed by the public.
So what's important is to remember that this is a historic spring. And so to be able to just hear the water running over the rocks, much like it did for hundreds and hundreds of years, we wanted it to be subtle and not to upstage the Parthenon at all. So just the idea of feeling that you're in a very peaceful, natural feeling area. This was the threshold to the park. So that idea of it being a clean, simple design.
And to kind of set as a backdrop to this beautiful threshold is we have some native landscaping that is just coming into bloom in this time of year. Tell me a little bit about some of the plant choices around the threshold here.
I'll do so. So this is a great way to view this. You're looking at the plaza, and it was important to us to use local materials. The crab orchard is the stone. It's called crab orchard stone. It's a variegated variety, and we love the waves in it. We like the way that the color of the crab orchard stone picked up the columns in the Parthenon. But as importantly, crab orchard Tennessee was a part of this Natchez Trace, that time frame. So they're the crabapple trees, which are of crab orchard Tennessee. We have native plants, Fothergilla. You have the Virginia sweet spire in front of that, and some more here that's just getting ready to bloom. We have Calicarpa. So it has just a magenta berry.
In the wildlife.
Yes, great for wildlife. To this side, this is this low-growth sumac.
I love that.
Hypericum, more Calicarpa. So really trying to use what I'm thinking of as workhorses in the landscape.
That's right.
Nothing
These are all
ornamental.
tough plants.
All
tough
native
natives
choices.
that you got here. And it's just really great to see how so many elements are all intertwined, from the crab orchard stone to the crabapple trees and successional forest. I love how you all are playing off all the different themes.
Yeah. Well, something too is you start with the history, and that informs our design. But as important is kind of this environmental, the sustainability.
Right.
What do we do with 50 million gallons of water?
Right, absolutely.
Why do we choose the plants we choose? You know, why native plants? And all of it plays into that.
I see the rill continues down in a meandering path here and into what you all call the wetland area. Tell me a little bit about the key feature of this area and what you're all trying to accomplish.
So it's important that the water carries through in kind of a sinuous way through the landscape. We are falling about 0.5% a foot to keep the water moving through here. And remember, I'd said it's about 200 gallons a minute.
Right.
It can be as low as 150 gallons, but about
Still a lot of water.
Yeah, a lot of water moving through here. You can see where we've opened the channel. When the water comes up just a little higher, the water moves into the wetland.
Okay.
It's washed by these plants. It has a little bit of phosphorus in it, and that takes the phosphorus out of it. It's then collected in 2 huge underground cisterns. They're 8 feet by 20 feet
Wow.
each. They're huge. And that water then is pumped up to Lake Watauga.
That's a good distance away from where we're standing.
Right, but if you go up there now, we called 2012 the last summer of slime up on that lake because we were able to dredge it. And then because it's getting this clear, cool water, it's now just the water quality is hugely improved. And so the intent is to continue using this water, clean it in the wetland. We can control how much water is in this wetland at any time and then reuse it throughout the park. So eventually Centennial Park will be a water neutral park.
Talk to me a little bit about some of these plantings. I can tell it's starting to all wake up around here and it's all starting to lush out a little bit. Tell me a little bit about the plantings.
So the thinking here was to have the color palette we thought about would be more purples and greens.
Okay.
So we have juncus, we have iris coming up, and then we have the swamp milkweed. Those are really our 3 perennial type plants that are
Love wet
planted
feet.
in here. Yeah, enjoy wet feet, don't mind it. And then on the banks we have some of the Ilex decidua, the holly, just to hold the berries for the birds, and again, a native plant.
Absolutely, another wildlife feature.
And something else that if we're in this area too, and we're staring right at it, is these walls, they trace the old Natchez Trace Trail.
Wow.
The large stone walls, and it'd be unusual to get stone this size.
It's huge.
But we found these were the old bridge abutment for the Demonbreun Bridge.
Wow.
So they're also historic, but to bring them back and just on one end of the stones it says Natchez, on the other it says Nashville.
Tell me a little about your knowledge of Centennial Park and what it means to you.
Well, we've got the Parthenon right behind us, and it is the remnant of the Centennial Exposition in 1897. And so this park wouldn't be the park if it weren't for this huge exposition. It's fascinating to me because it was built in less than a year. It really represented community, it represented diversity, celebration, innovation. If you can imagine, it had not only Centennial Park, it had a pyramid, it had tightrope walkers, it had different houses that represented all the different interests. It had a women's building, it had an agricultural building. It also had an area called, it had rides, one called Snakes and Ladders. And
the water ride here, I believe?
Yes, they had, yes. So it was really celebrated in 1897. If you can imagine, there were about 10,000 visitors a day.
Wow.
There were 1.8 million people that visited it in a 6-month time. That would be like 19 million people visiting Nashville now today.
Incredible.
You think of 10,000 visitors a day, the city was 95,000 population. It was this huge success. President McKinley opened the exposition by pulling a lever in Washington, D.C., lighting up the exposition because electricity was such a big deal. Booker T. Washington visited, Susan B. Anthony visited. I mean, you can go on and on. So it's really a time that celebrates all the good parts of human beings. You know,
right.
It really does. You think about the innovation, you think about all of the things going on. It closed with $37 in the bank. And then it was all made of plaster Paris, so everything just was
So it's
temporary.
almost temporary,
Take
right,
it all
right.
down, except not the Parthenon.
That wasn't the case with the
People
Parthenon.
love the Parthenon. Centennial Park became a park in 1903. It was our first real big city park in Nashville. And then the Parthenon was built as a permanent structure in the 1920s. Well, next steps. So this first step is not only Cockrill Spring, but phase one was all of the work on Cockrill Spring, Musician's Corner, which you can see there, which providing a permanent place for the best lawn party in Nashville is what it's dubbed. It's changed from 500 people to over 3,000 now. So we had to make sure that we designed an amphitheater that never feels empty. We'll be renovating the Great Lawn. It gets a lot of traffic, so doing engineering the Great Lawn, continuing and strengthening the alley of trees to either side of the Great Lawn. We're really interested in revitalizing the core of the park. The design team, the lead designer was Thomas Woltz of Nelson Bird Woltz out of Charlottesville. Hodson Douglas was the local landscape architectural team that worked with us, and then I represented the private concern, so my firm. So those three firms worked with Metro Parks and the Conservancy.
Beautiful.
And finished on time and on budget.
How about that? We like that when that happens in this industry. Fantastic. More to come. Can't wait.